السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما مزيدا. قال الله عز وجل بعد أن أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Your brothers and sisters, as many of you may know, this month is commemorated as Islamophobia Awareness Month, IAM. Every year in November, dozens if not hundreds of Muslim organizations in the UK put on events, raise awareness, and there's khutbas happening all across the country about the topic of Islamophobia and raising awareness about Islamophobia. Whenever this topic comes up, whenever this month comes around, whenever I hear about Islamophobia, which is of course the irrational fear and hatred of Muslims and Islam, the rational rejection of Islam, which is part of that. Whenever I hear of this, I always think back to the Quran, because the Quran contains guidance for all of our affairs. And I always think, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about these phenomena? Because Islamophobia and other types of irrational hatred and racism, whilst not in the same form, they have existed as early as the first human being. The rejection of Adam alayhi salam by Iblis, the rejection of the truth by a person of falsehood. This has existed since day one. In particular, the stories of the prophets in the Quran, they give us lots of guidance from many angles. Stories that we can learn lessons from for our day and age, for our lives, for our families, our societies. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ هَدَى اللَّهُ فَبِهُدَاهُ مُقْتَدِي. Those are indeed the ones whom Allah has guided. So follow the guidance of the prophets and messengers mentioned in the Quran. And when you think about the prophets and messengers mentioned in the Quran, when you think about the stories mentioned in the Quran, when you think about the names of individuals mentioned in the Quran, Number one and number two in terms of the most frequently mentioned are who? Musa and Fir'aun. Musa alayhi salam, the mighty messenger of Allah, and Fir'aun, the one who is sent to, the enemy, the villain in that story. The archetypal Islamophobe, you can say. And the story of Musa alayhi salam and Fir'aun, you can fill days and days just discussing the benefits, the reflections, the morals and lessons from this story. But let's look at it from a perspective of looking at Islamophobia. Because the more you look at it from a particular lens, from this lens, the more gems you get from this story. Just like the Quran, it's a book of guidance. It's not a book of stories, it's not a book of law, it's not a book of character, it's a book of guidance. It includes all of these things and more. And when you're looking for guidance from the Quran, on any particular topic you'll find, you do a whole reading of the Quran with a particular intention. For example, I want to read the Quran to learn skills for life. You will find them. I want to read the Quran to learn akhlaq, morals, virtue, good character. I will find it. I want to read the Quran to learn how to build a civilization. You will find it. So let's look at the Quran. Let's look at this story in particular when it comes to trying to learn about Islamophobia. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا مُوسَى بِآيَاتِنَا وَسُلْطَانٍ مُبِينٍ. We have certainly sent Musa alayhi salam with our authority and clear authority, a clear mandate from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To who? إِلَى فِرْعَوْنَ وَهَامَانَ وَقَارُونَ فَقَالُوا سَاحِرٌ كَذَّابٌ. We sent Musa alayhi salam with our mandate, with a clear instruction and clear authority from Allah to Pharaoh, to Haman, and to Qarun. And they said to him, what? Magician, liar. This is the initial reaction of these three people. Now, whilst we're going to go into this in a bit more detail and shall learn some more lessons, the scholars of Tafsir, they told us to reflect on these three people. Why are these three people mentioned? Musa alayhi salam is sent to who? Fir'aun, Haman, and Qarun. These three people, if you reflect on it deeper, they represent three archetypes which are present in any type of systemic oppression of human beings. Fir'aun, the Pharaoh, is an archetypal tyrant, drunk on power. The one who believes himself to be a god, believes himself to be superior to others, the supremacist. This is present in almost any type of structural racism or structural type of oppression. Haman, who is Haman? Haman represents the class just beneath the Pharaoh. The people, the mala, the chiefs, the people who get things done, the political authority, the political establishment. Pharaoh is the one who feels himself as above everyone, but he needs people to do his dirty work. He needs chiefs, he needs that class of people. And you'll find again and again in the Quran when looking at oppressors, when looking at prophets who are sent to warn against oppressors, to warn against tyrants, to warn against people of dhulm. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will often mention this term, al-mala, the chiefs, the ruling classes, because it's not just one person doing everything himself, the Pharaoh, no. He relies on the ruling classes, the aristocracy, whatever you want to call it, to exercise his plans and to have that power balance with them. And Qarun is the third person mentioned. Qarun, we all know the story of Qarun as the archetypal rich person, financier. You need money, you need finances, you need resources to carry out oppression. But Qarun, when it comes to Islamophobia, he has another element of his character as well. Qarun has another element of his character as well, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ قَارُونَ كَانَ مِنْ قَوْمِ مُوسَى بَغَى عَلَيْهِ. Indeed, Qarun was from the people of Moses, Musa alayhi salam. He was from Bani Israel. Some Mufassirun, some Sahaba even said that he was the cousin of Musa alayhi salam. بَغَى عَلَيْهِ. but he betrayed them. He betrayed Banu Israel. He sided with the oppressor against his own people. And in doing so, he got very rich. And this archetype is a fourth. This is a fourth type of person who very often, if not always, exists when it comes to one group oppressing another. The oppressed classes, they will choose some person or some people from them, raise them above others, to be the archetypal sellout, the Uncle Tom, the house Muslim, the house Negro, as Malcolm X rahimahullah described it. The native collaborator. There's lots of research on this, lots of sociology and anthropology on this feature of the oppressed class, someone from the oppressed class joining the oppressor. And there's no shortage of these, unfortunately, in our day and age, where they can wheel out a Muslim-looking face on the TV, on the news, who looks like a Muslim, but he's speaking everything against his own community, against Islam, against Muslims, against the Sharia. And he wants to please, or she wants to please, the oppressive narrative, the dominant hegemonic narrative, for example. So when we look at this story of Musa alayhi salam and Fir'aun, we see that he's sent to these three people, and each of them can represent a different type of person. So what happens? فَقَالُوا سَاحِرٌ كَذَّابٌ. Off the bat, what starts? Name calling, slandering, calling him a magician, calling him a liar. Musa alayhi salam, he continues giving his message. He continues demanding for the release of Banu Israel from bondage. He continues fighting against this dhulm. He continues teaching them about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who is Allah? Telling them to come out of their ship. But it doesn't work for Fir'aun. The slander doesn't work. It makes him keep carrying on with the message of La ilaha illallah, with the message of release Banu Israel. So what is Fir'aun's next trick? What's Fir'aun's next trick? He's having a conversation, they're having an argument. Musa alayhi salam's argument is obviously superior, so Fir'aun has to move to a next tactic. So what do you say of people who went before us? What's he trying to do? What are you saying about our people? Are they in hellfire? What's happening to them? He wants to cause divisions, cause hatred against Musa alayhi salam's message. Just tell people, look, he's saying that your forefathers are in the hellfire. What does Musa alayhi salam say? He doesn't take the bait. He says, قَالَ عِلْمُهَا عِنْدَ رَبِّي فِي كِتَابٍ لَا يَضِلُّ رَبِّي وَلَا يَنْسَى. The knowledge of this is with only Allah in a record. Allah doesn't forget, He doesn't make any mistakes, and He doesn't forget. He's staying on point. Don't ask me, don't talk about random different things that's trying to cause division between us and make the general people hate us. I'm focusing on my point. Worship Allah alone and release Bani Israel from bondage. So it doesn't, Fir'aun's tricks don't work. He has to become increasingly more and more hostile against Musa. He organizes a showdown. He says, yes, it's the magician, we've got our own magicians, a showdown. What happens? The magicians, they see the miracles of Musa salam by the permission of Allah, and they all fall down prostrating, believing in Allah, accepting this, because they are the ones who are most qualified to confirm that this is not magic, this is not sorcery, this is not a trick, this is something from beyond this realm. What's Fir'aun's next trick? He's running out of options. His next trick is what? قال لئن اتخذت إلها غيري لأجعلنك من المسجونين. He says to Musa alayhi salam and to others who follow him, if you take a deity, an ilah, an object of veneration and following and obedience and worship other than me, I will imprison you. Does this sound familiar? This is happening to many of our brothers and sisters all over the world. Not just physically imprisoned, but restricted in terms of their rights, their movement, for example. And ilah, this is the pinnacle. But many brothers and sisters are being oppressed for less than just that, the whole ilah. Our ilah is what today? our values, our customs, our norms, going against our culture. But does it stop Musa alayhi salam? He continues in his da'wah. He continues in his activism. He brings the miracles. He carries on his da'wah. Then Fir'aun has to ramp it up a bit more. قال للملأ حوله إن هذا لساحر عليم يريد أن يخرجكم من أرضكم بسحره فماذا تعملون. He's telling his chiefs now, he's telling the aristocracy, the doers, the movers and shakers in his society, he's saying, this person, he's a dangerous magician. He wants to drive you out of your land with his magic. He wants to drive you away. In another place, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, قال فرعون ذروني أقتل موسى وليدع ربه إني أخاف أن يبدل دينكم أو أن يظهر في الأرض الفساد. I'm going to kill him. Let me kill him. Let him call upon his Lord. Indeed, I fear that he's going to change your way of life. He's going to change your values, and he's going to spread corruption on the earth. What is Fir'aun saying? The final step is what? He's labeling Musa alayhi salam as a threat to national security, a threat to our nation's sovereignty, a threat to our values. Does this sound familiar? This is the archetype of this type of structural oppression, which relies on a sustained rejection of the truth. We could go on for hours and hours, brothers and sisters, looking at the Quran and deriving lessons and reflections about the creation when it comes to Islamophobia, when it comes to racism, when it comes to rejection of the truth, when it comes to opposition. But what do we want to do? We want to raise awareness in this month, being, like I mentioned, Islamophobia Awareness Month. And there are some practical things that we can do alongside learning from these lessons from the Quran. And the next khutbah I want us to briefly summarize. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. What do we want to do, dear brothers and sisters? When we look at the lessons when we look at stories from the Quran, like Musa alayhi salam against Fir'aun, against Haman, against Qarun, against these oppressors, we want to be like Musa alayhi salam. You're not prophets, you can't do miracles in that traditional sense. But what was Musa alayhi salam characterized by? A victorious mindset. Yes, he might feel scared or on a zoomed in level, but overall he knows Allah is with him, and Allah will guide him, Allah will support him, and the end is going to be good. He felt he had a victorious mindset which was very different to the subjugated mindset of Banu Israel. And we see this contrast in the Quran, in the story of Musa alayhi salam and his people. Banu Israel, they were in bondage, they were enslaved, they were being killed, persecuted, tortured. And it shows in the way they reacted to Musa. Musa, what have you done? We were okay then, you've taken it, now Fir'aun's going to hurt us even more. Oh Musa, look, now there's the river, the sea is here, and Fir'aun is behind us. Musa, we're destroyed. Even after seeing miracle after miracle after miracle, after being saved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the permission of Allah, they're still complaining. Musa, we need something else to eat. Musa, the whole story of the calf, for example. Yeah. Oh, imitating other cultures. Look, they have a golden statue. Make one ilah for us like this. They have a subjugated mindset due to the subjugation of the victim. But Musa alayhi salam didn't have this mindset. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused him to be raised in the palace of Fir'aun. He didn't absorb this weak, victimized, subjugated mindset. And this is what we want. To think, and our children to think like winners. Our children to think like leaders. That yes, you recognize the dhulm, you recognize the oppression, you speak out against it, but you don't internalize it, you don't feel battered and weak and beleaguered. When Khabab, one of the companions in the early phase of the Dawah of the Prophet, he was a slave, he was an ironsmith, and his master used to burn him and torture him. When he came to the Prophet ﷺ asking, saying, Ya Rasulullah, will you make dua for us? The Prophet ﷺ became angry, became stern, because he sensed, he didn't want this weakness coming to the hearts of his ummah. He said, this matter will prevail. What are you going through? I'm paraphrasing. What are you going through? There were people who came before you who went through worse than what you're going through. Amazing. Look at the type of leader the Prophet ﷺ was. If someone came up to us, we'd say, oh, have someone, it's okay. No, the Prophet ﷺ said, people who came before you went through something worse than what you're going through. But that didn't cause them to waver. This matter will prevail until a woman can travel alone from Sana'a to Hadramaut. Meaning he's giving them a victorious outlook. He's giving them a narrative to look in the future. So we work hard, we stand up against oppression, but we don't let it absorb into our hearts and make us feel weak and victimized and subjugated. What else can we do? Practically, in this nationwide campaign, Islamophobia Awareness Month, one of the things we want every single brother and sister to do is educate yourself and others about Islamophobia. There are so many activities going on in the local area nationally. One of the things we're trying to get all of our Muslim brothers to do and sisters is to report any Islamophobic incidents they see or they experience. One of the problems that we've seen, and this is a good sign that Muslims don't feel victimized, that stuff happens and we just ignore it, we don't report it. It's good that we don't feel victimized, but we need to report it so we have statistics. We need to report Islamophobic incidents if they happen, so we get statistics. If it's an emergency, obviously dial 999. But if it's not an emergency, you experience some Islamophobic incident, dial 101 and report it as an Islamophobic incident. We have to get this clear, because there are many brothers and sisters who work very hard to get the police constabularies across the UK to record Islamophobic incidents in a specific category. They spent the last 5-10 years doing this, lobbying this. Now we're getting statistics, we're getting information to lobby the government, to lobby authorities, to lobby different power holders in this game. So if you experience an Islamophobic incident, we want to encourage our brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, report it to the police and tell them what is logged as an Islamophobic incident. 101. If you feel you don't want to do it yourself, it's very easy. You can contact the Islamophobia Response Unit. This is a new organization, mashallah, staffed with Muslim brothers and sisters and non-Muslim friends who help people who've been subject to any Islamophobic incidents, to give them legal advice, give them other types of advice. And it's diru.org.uk. diru.org.uk, the Islamophobic Response Unit. What else do we want to do? We want to educate our friends and neighbors, take part in events that are happening about Islamophobia Awareness Month, educate ourselves and our friends and our colleagues about Islamophobia, and use this as an opportunity to educate them about Islam, who are Muslims, what do you actually believe. And number 3, the third piece of advice I will give, and I always give our brothers and sisters when it comes to Islamophobia: media. When you see something in the media which is Islamophobic, which is like so much fake news and propaganda, report it. One of the reasons why it goes so far is because we don't report it. We just say, look how stupid these people are, and we just ignore it. No. If you see something factually incorrect, for example, if you see something Islamophobic, it takes 2 minutes to Google the name of the editor, the email address of the editor of that publication, and say, I disagree with this is Islamophobic. There was in the BBC a few years ago, I remember, when it comes to a story about Palestine and Zionist occupation, they had some fake headline about spinning showing the Palestinians in the negative light. as is usual. And they changed the headline on their website and issued a correction and apology because of 5 complaints. Just 5 complaints. I remember this. But what happens? We see millions, thousands of brothers and sisters will see something and they'll say, oh, this is so rubbish. How many of us are going to actually get up and complain and write an email, write a message, write an Ofcom? If you see something on TV, anything broadcast on TV or radio, you have Ofcom, for example. Google Ofcom, OFCOM. It's very easy to launch a complaint. And if you do so, the TV channel has to go through a whole long process of investigating that complaint. Imagine if just 1% of us here did this when we saw something negative in the media, something Islamophobic, something racist, then the channels would just be more careful for publishing rubbish. Of course. So, these are 3 practical steps you can do. Number 1, if you see or experience some Islamophobic incident, report it. Encourage your brothers and sisters to report it. 999 if it's an emergency, 101 if it's not an emergency. If you don't want to report it to the police, go to the IRU report in the UK, the Islamophobia response unit, and speak to them. They will report it for you and get those statistics. Number 2, take part in raise awareness about Islamophobia by the society. And number 3, when you see something Islamophobic or racist in the media, report it. Don't just get angry and leave it like that. Report it to Ofcom, report it, and write a letter or email to the editorial publication, or just click complaints button, whatever, any website. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to stand up and not just protect our rights and our brothers and sisters' rights, but be a beacon leading all of our society and humanity at large when it comes to oppression, when it comes to dhulm, when it comes to these types of things. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to overcome our shortcomings and raise the next generation to be confident and impactful in this regard. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ وَاعْفُ عَنَّا وَاغْفِرْ لَنَا وَارْحَمْنَا أَنْتَ مَوْلَانَا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. آمين. الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى والذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء نحوا سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. هل أتاك حديث غاشية وجوه يومئذ خاشعة عاملة ناصبة تصلى نارا حامية تسقى من عين آنية ليس لهم طعام إلا من ضريع لا يسمن ولا يغني من جوع وجوه يومئذ ناعمة لسعيها راضية في جنة عالية لا تسمع فيها لاغية فيها عين جارية فيها سرر مرفوعة وأكواب موضوعة ونمارق مصفوفة وزرابي مبثوثة أفلا ينظرون إلى الإبل كيف خلقت وإلى السماء كيف رفعت وإلى الجبال كيف نصبت وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت فذكر إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر إلا من تولى وكفر فيعذبه الله العذاب الأكبر إن إلينا إيابهم ثم إن علينا حسابهم. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.